Today, we are going to look at literature review. For you to go to literature review and write this chapter, we believe that this is not the first time you are reading literature. There are two other stages where probably you have been reading literature. At this step, you have gathered enough journal articles. Those two stages, number one, during the conceptual phase, you started reviewing the literature. You read about the definitions and meaning of your IV and DV. And during the design and planning phase, when you were writing your background, you have read several journal articles on previous studies that have been conducted regarding your study variables, IV and DV, the relationship between them, and probably the theories explaining the nature of the relationship between them. And you have also read the literature about the current situation about your IV and DV. Yes, I've seen many people have said the network is not good. They are preferring the first one. Okay, let us try to go back to the first network and see. In the process, this one may disconnect us, but let us try to go back. Members, it seems we are going to persevere. It seems we are going to persevere. Yes, members, I was saying that this section of literature review, by the time you write it, you have already gathered enough literature. But for you to write this section, you should be having a good background to the study. And a good background to the study will give you clear purpose and clear specific objectives, which are now going to guide you in writing your literature review chapter. There are a few things we have discussed in this section regarding its format and flow. But that one you can see the way we have organized the chapter. The key take home you may need in today's class is on how to do literature review, especially at a PhD level, what we call critical literature review. How to avoid plagiarism when you are writing your research. How to identify gaps. And when you, for example, read a given source of information, what do you get from that and what do you write? Do you copy and paste? What do you do? So we expect that by the end of this presentation, one, you know how to structure a literature review chapter. Two, you know how to identify relevant literature. You know what to read from a given source of literature, or what to look for when you are reading a particular literature source. What are you looking for? And then you know what to write, how to write it, how to avoid plagiarism, and finally, how to identify gaps. We started with a few remarks here that literature review should tell you that as a researcher, you should know that you are only contributing to a given and ongoing debate. So, you are not the first and you are not the last to do research on the issue you are researching upon. So that issue, which we are calling the debate, the ongoing debate, which is your research idea, your research problem, has been thought of by other previous people. You are not the first to think about it. People have thought about it before, probably many years ago. And every day people will think about it. You are not even the last. Even your children and grandchildren . The network has continued to be. I said, literature review means that there are so many views of people about the same issue you are researching about. Therefore, before you add your views on that issue, it is important that you get to know the previous views of other people or other scholars, so that you avoid duplicating what they have already said or what they have already done. A lot has been said on a particular topic. So before you give your personal contribution, you need to be aware of what others have said. And this is what we do in literature review. So it is an ongoing debate, as we said. It is an ongoing debate. That's why we said that a good proposal should include literature to know what others have already done and what they have not done. So we said here that literature review is a thorough systematic identification or location and reading of the documents that have information related to your research issue or research problem. The review will help you a lot, as we have already indicated. It will help you a lot. We have given 4 points on how literature review will help you, as you can see them here. But if I pick out, for example, point number 2, where we said that you are sharing what earlier researchers said about your research issue. You are sharing with them. It is like you enter a debate and you first listen before you talk, because you don't know yet what others have said. Therefore, you cannot react. You first wait to react. So that is what is number 2 is telling you, so that you can be able to identify what they have not said, and those are the gaps, and what therefore you can add, to see whether what you can add is relevant. Even if you want to repeat or to supplement or to add on somebody's idea, it is better to add or to repeat when you know that you are adding or you are replicating what somebody has already said, and you don't say it as if it is said for the first time. These are a few points to guide, to take note of. That first of all, identify the sources of literature. And we have several ways on how to approach the literature search. And we may have different approaches. Some people go by variables, others go by objectives. Whatever the approach you use, after gathering your literature, you make sure that you read comprehensively the literature of other people, what others have said. You understand it. So when we say read comprehensively, we also mean read critically. To read critically means you read and you understand what others have said before you add. So you can be able even to tell us what others have said in brief. So when we say critically read and try to understand what others wrote on any of your variables, then you can critically write. When we say critically write what is clear and understandable to you and therefore to the readers. You should write when you have the readers in mind. and you put yourself in the shoes of the reader, that if I were the reader, would I understand what I am writing? In other words, you write what you would wish to read, what you would love to read. If your writing, for example, is unclear and you also don't want to read things which are disconnected, you are moving from one point to another, they are highly disconnected, you wouldn't love to read such a literature. You want to organize your literature and to read it in a clear way, when it is flowing well. In other words, when you simply cut and paste what others have said, you will have disconnected literature. But if you read, you make your notes outside and then you start joining your points together, there you will make sense in what you are writing. So we said, bring out. That is the noise I was telling you about. So we said, you bring out, try to bring out the meanings and the interpretations in relation to your study. So don't just put up things which we don't understand and which you yourself don't understand, and you leave them for the reader to see, to suffer. So that's what we say, critically discuss, and you bring out the meaning. What do those things you write mean? What do they mean? So literature review will help in the different phases of the research, as I have already said, in problem identification, in theoretical perspective. Yeah, I'm using, but the noise there has interrupted. Remember, whenever I run away from the other place which has noise, my internet gets interrupted. I think we may not be. I was telling you that literature review will help you in the different stages of your research. So every stage you reach, try to use both the views of other people and your personal view. This is what it means. The views of other people and your personal view. I mean, yes, you have a thinking about a particular issue. That is the problem you are researching about. Yes, you have your view. But before you present your view, listen to other people's views. And listening here means read other people's views so that you can harmonize your views. Somebody is asking, how is literature review in problems identification different from literature review under chapter 2, I think. Chapter 1, chapter 2. I think that is what you wanted to mean. But when we are in the problem statement or chapter 1, we mainly look for facts. Facts about your problem. That is what you are looking for. Yes, you can have a few of the findings of previous researchers, especially when you want to look at the gaps, but we don't mainly discuss findings in chapter 1. That is the difference. We don't mainly discuss findings in chapter 1. In chapter 1, the literature review which is there is simply to help us identify facts about the problem so that we can be able to give enough evidences about the problem we are investigating. We don't mainly discuss those findings. We discuss facts about the problem. I think I have given my view as far as the difference between literature in chapter 1 and chapter 2 is concerned. So having made those few notes, we can look at the flow of chapter 2. As we have already indicated here, we have a 2.0, which is the introduction, showing a brief outline of what the chapter is going to be, how your chapter is going to flow. What I have given here as an example is just an example, but you have to follow the way your chapter 2 flows. In other words, you mention the main headings and sub-headings of your chapter 2. Now, under the 2.1 theoretical review, we have already discussed what you should present under theory. In chapter 1, we said that you have to identify a theory which tries to explain the nature of your problem. So this theoretical review in chapter 2 is a continuation of the brief theory or theoretical perspective which you gave in chapter 1. We also remind you here that we said that theories are explanations about how a concept or a variable is logically connected with other events on ground. How things connect logically, the logical explanation of things. We have given several examples on this. If somebody is explaining the occurrence of malaria as a problem, logically, how is malaria causing a problem to man? You can explain how COVID attacks man. That is a logical explanation of how a certain event or how a certain problem occurs. How it occurs and why it occurs. But these two are different. How something occurs and why it occurs. When you say why, you are talking about causation. What causes it? But before you understand what causes it, it is important to understand how it occurs. So understanding how something occurs is important, and theories have already explained how so many things occur, either in management, either in health, even in technology. When you have a new technology you want to invent, your task is to explain, to look for all experimental evidences to explain how technologically that event occurs, or how does it solve the problem? What solutions? How does it offer the solution? The logical connection. That is theory. Logical connection to reality. That's why yesterday I told you that the way we take theory here in developing countries is unserious. We think theory is anything that is not applicable, which is the opposite of it. Theory explains how something occurs and how can it apply in different contexts. Only that a theory is a conclusion which is reached after a long investigation. Therefore, that conclusion is a summary of a lot of knowledge, a lot of explanation. A theory is a summary of a lot of explanation of how an event occurs, giving the details of A to Z, but because a theory is condensed, the A to Z does not come out in a theoretical statement. It will come out when you go deep to read about that theory. So a theory explains why things happen the way they happen. So why do we do a theoretical review? When we do a theoretical review, it means we are going to read comprehensively about a theory, the theoretical explanations of a given issue. Usually, a theory has assumptions it has tested. It has given assumptions in its explanation. It is after those assumptions that the theory tries to tell us the logical link between a study variable and the practical issues in life. So as a researcher at this point, at this level, you have to do a critical review of a theory. Not even one, but you first of all begin to ask yourself, what are the existing theoretical explanations on the study idea I have? Are there theoretical explanations? If yes, can you please try to list them down and then point out a few or one which your study is going to test? So after reading, you will be able to identify what your study is going to do. Is it going to validate a theory? To validate a theory means that the solutions the theory has given, you are going to test them to see whether they work in your local context. Usually, a developer of a theory could not be, maybe could have been out of your study context. You may wonder whether the theoretical conclusions reached by that person can also apply in your study location. That is why you go and collect the data following the assumptions of the theory, and then you find out whether they are true or not. If they are true, you say the theory has been validated in your study context. If they are not true, you may try to modify and you explain a different contextual version of the theory. Either you may expand that theory to introduce other elements which maybe the theory did not explicitly bring out. Here we said that as you are writing your theoretical review, You are going to expand the theory which you introduced briefly in chapter 1. And in doing so, you will answer these questions. We have already answered these questions in chapter 1, but we are seeing which question are we adding. Remember, before you add any question, you should have read about that theory thoroughly well. Don't rush. Don't say, when shall I read all this book and finish? Don't rush. If it is a full week that you are reading theory, do so. Don't think that knowledge can come your way just by putting in very little effort. Just know that knowledge generation is costly. It is expensive to generate knowledge, to produce knowledge. So don't think that it will be one day you read about a theory, you understand it completely. No. For example, you may take a full day trying to gather information on the different theories that have been conducted on your study. On your study variable or study problem. So after reading, searching, and gathering information, this is what you are going to write. Remember, you gather a lot of information, but not all of it is going to be written. You are only going to write a summarized version of what you have found out. You are reporting exactly what you got when you went for a search, a literature review search. You are going to answer the first question. What theory? What theory? And each theory has a name it was given. The other time I talked about the 2080 rule as a theory proposed by Pareto. There are so many other theories. In ICT, there are so many. In management, there are so many. McGregor's theory, X and Y. At least most of you have studied about Maslow's hierarchy of motivation or theory of motivation. There are so many. Each theory has a name. Then when you go to question 2, whose theory? We said in chapter 1 that each theory has a developer. Who developed it? That name of a person. When was it developed? The year. We said this is the year when the original research which resulted into development of that theory was published. The year when that research was published. Somebody could have taken 5 years conducting research or 10 years conducting research. But the year they declare their findings is the year the theory came to be known. And that is the year we want here. When was it proposed? Where have you cited it? This means that you have read a book where that theory has been explained. There are 2 possibilities here. It is possible that you may access the original publication of the developer of the theory. For example, you may access the original publication of Abraham Maslow's on the theory of motivation. But because some of the theories are so old, you may fail to access, especially here in Africa, where our archives are not so good. You may fail to access the original article published by Maslow's. But many recent research works have tried to describe Maslow's theory. And many management books have written about Maslow's theory and given explanation. So where have you read about it? This is a citation. If this is different from the original article of the author. If it is different, yes. Now, after profiling this information, bullet number 1, number 2, number 3, and 4. This is profiling information about a theory. The origin, the background information of a theory. Now, you know what to look for when you are reading about a theory. The name of the theory, the name of the developer, the year when it was developed, and the book you are reading, whether it is for the developer or for another person. Now, when you have finished profiling the theory, then you can now go to the details. This bullet number 5 tells us, what does it say? What does that theory say? For you to answer this question, you need to read about the different authors of the theory. So the authors about the theory you are writing about, and you become well conversant of what the theory says. Somewhere we have explained and said that for you to answer this question, what the theory says, you need to bring out the original statement, the original conclusion of the developer. We said that each theory has a summary statement which summarizes the main idea about that theory. We need that statement here. Either in your own words or quoted in the original words. But the possibilities may differ. You may not get the exact quotation. But when you are reading works of others, they can tell you what the theory says. We need the summary statement. Usually, a theory is summarized in 4 or 3 ways. It can be summarized in words, that is a statement, or it can be summarized in a mathematical expression, or it can be summarized in a diagrammatic representation. In most cases, when a theory is presented diagrammatically or mathematically, that kind of presentation is followed by a textual statement. Even if it is a diagrammatic representation, the author will follow it with a word description of what the theory says. So you may need to present both. Take an example. In economics, there is a theory called the Keynesian consumption theory. which was proposed by John M. Keynes. That theory has been summarized in a mathematical statement, which is very easy to write mathematically. But when you expand it in words, you can write many pages. So as a researcher, we need you to bring out this. Sometimes you also, at this point, you also bring out the assumptions of that theory. Because sometimes the assumptions of the theory follow the theoretical statement. Now, if you have presented well this bullet, whether it is a paragraph or a continuation of the first paragraph, now you are ready to go and tell us how is that theory related to your study? How is it related to your study? In this case, you have studied about the assumptions which the theory tries to explain. Which assumptions now can show you the connection, the logical link to your study variable? You may find that a theory has 4 assumptions, but it is only one assumption that works in your study. It is okay. That is what you have to identify. Because a theory, as we said, a body of knowledge. A theory is a body of knowledge. Some people say theory is a body of conclusions. It is so wide and it has wide application. Don't think it is only applied or applicable to your study alone. It is applicable to so many other situations. Like I told you that when Pareto introduced his principle of efficiency, Pareto was a physician, and people did not know that it would also work in economics. Only to find out that in UK, 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. That little research that was done around the UK of that time concretized the conclusions of Pareto. Other people in other fields came also to find out that the same principle is working. So that's why we say a theory is a discovery of knowledge. Because even in time management, we said that usually in a day, 80% of the activities you do them in 20% of the time of the day. The remaining 80% of the time, you do only 20% of the activities. Now, if you read about this principle, you will see that everywhere it is working. Some people have even applied it in natural sciences to say that the world is made up of 80% water and 20% land. And so many other situations, people are applying this theory, and they find it that even in natural sciences, the principle is true. Even religious people have started saying that in the world, 80% of the people will go to hell and 20% of the people will go to paradise. I don't know whether it is true or not true. So, but that is how mad a principle or a theoretical statement can go and reach. So it is a discovery. It is a discovery, and when you discover it and you start to test it on several other fields and you see it is true, you even celebrate and you say you have discovered it. You hear in science, one man was bathing. I don't know whether you remember that history. The man was bathing, was going in the bathroom to bathe actually. He had put water in whatever he was going to, the container he was going to bathe from. And what, I don't remember what exactly, what object did he have, whether it was soap, whether it was what, and it fell into the container of water he was going to bathe. And certain water fell off. I don't know how it came, but you know history and science very well better than me. The man came to find out that the exact amount of water that was displaced by the object which fell into water was equal to the weight of the object. Some historians even said that the man did not even wait to put on clothes. He just jumped out and said, I have discovered it. People were seeing him not putting on, and what is this man meaning? I have discovered it. I have discovered it. I have discovered it. You see, that theory in physics, you know it. What is that theory? The man shouted. Somebody has said the Archimedes principle. Yes. It is a discovery. It is a theory. It is a principle. It is a rule. It is a law. But something has to be tested. So here we are just showing you that you can relate the theory to your study. How is it connecting to your study? At least if you are not able to discover a theory, try to understand the existing ones. If you are not able, at least you validate existing ones. Our first lecture was saying that research can be done to validate knowledge. And we said that research is very important. A lot of knowledge exists which is useful. We don't know that it is useful. We suffer with the problems. We cannot use solutions which have already reached 100 years ago, because we don't do research to find out how they can be applied in our own contexts. So it is important for you to have a logical link between the theory and your study problem. If you can do that, you can even find out the weaknesses in that theory. You can also point them out here. In other words, you do a critical review. Critical review is you point out the strength of the theory, the major strong points a theory tries to bring out in trying to explain your study problem, and probably what the theory did not explain well or clearly. That is what we call the critical review. If you do that, then you have done a good job. We have a case demonstration here which you can read about. For example, we have given Most of you know this lady. You can go and get her research and see where we extracted this information. But for those who may not be here, you see that we said the first thing is to identify the name of a theory. So this question was answered. This student said that the study was going to examine 3 theories, and each theory's name was mentioned clearly. The organizational equilibrium theory, the job embeddedness theory, and the conservation of resources theory. Down here, you will see that each theory, the student mentioned who developed it. For example, the organizational equilibrium theory was developed by 2 people, Mark and Simon, in the year 1958. So, who and when? As you read through, you will find that the points we have talked about here can be identified. And this is what we want, that when you go to literature review, you note down these points, because those are the ones we are looking for, and they are the ones we are going to discuss in your presentation. What does the theory say? You can see the point appearing here. How is it related to your study? The point is appearing here. You know, some people write and you look for points and you don't get them. Critical reading and critical writing means presenting a clear point where the researcher who is writing is conscious of the point he or she is writing. So your points should not fall accidentally. You should be conscious that at this point, this is what I'm writing. I'm writing a point to explain how this study is, how this theory is related to my study. In this paragraph, I'm writing a point to explain how or what the theory says. And you clearly write that paragraph knowing that all the information you are gathering is helping you to explain what the theory says, so that you don't keep mixing up your points. I said you write what you would wish others to write for you to read. I'll end here the conceptual, the theoretical review. And we go to the next section of literature review, which is conceptual review. This is also an expansion of the conceptual perspective in chapter 1. The conceptual perspective in chapter 1 is a brief section. You expand it here. In chapter 1, we said give one standard definition. Here we say you can give definitions and you can give meanings. In chapter 1, we did not say give meanings. You can identify even 5 authors of different definitions. What we want you to appreciate at this point is that different authors have given different views regarding the meaning of the variable which you are investigating upon. It is at this time you will be able to identify that a variable may mean differently in different disciplines. You can bring this one out so that you can justify why you are adopting a particular definition, because it is the one that has been used by authors in your discipline. It may not be good for a business person, to adopt a definition of medical unless you are sure that other people have adopted it. For example, the word environment in business means differently, and the word environment in chemistry means different, and the word environment in computer means differently. If you are, for example, a woman who is pregnant, we are talking about the environment in which a child in the womb undergoes. We are talking about a different thing. So when you as a researcher, you try to bring out these different understandings of a variable, it shows that you are thorough, and therefore we can have confidence in the definition you are going to give us, the working definition. So here we say to begin by identifying the authors who tried to provide a conceptual description of your variable. This one may also take you time. At a PhD level, you can even take a week trying to understand the conceptualization of your variable. Don't rush, although don't delay. Because when I say week, I'm not meaning that you are going to take a year defining your variables. This may not justify you taking 7 years in a PhD. No, 1 week may be enough, or less, depending on how many hours you are giving in each day to do a critical conceptual understanding of your variable. Remember, if you don't understand something at a conceptual level, you will never understand it. And therefore, your contribution to that variable will always be weak. A conceptual understanding is the foundation of your innovativeness in a variable. Because conceptual understanding means trying to understand something from its root. That's why we say you who are reading in English and you have your mother tongue, when you try to get a definition, try to think it through your mother tongue and try to understand it at least within your mother tongue. That's when you can claim that you have understood it. If it is not making sense in your mother tongue, then you continue reading about it. That's why some people say the innovativeness of students in countries where they don't study in their mother tongue is curtailed because of that ability to innovate, and the cause of it is conceptual understanding of what we study. We study variables, we think we understand them, but we understand the surface, not the conceptual ability. I've written about the importance of conceptualization and what we call conceptuality in some of the articles I have published. Although it was from a business perspective, but it can be applied everywhere. So when you read these definitions, we said do a critical reading. Critical reading means you are trying to understand them. When you have read many definitions, you try to compare those definitions to be able to see the differences in between them and the similarities in between them. So you may find 2 or more people whose definitions are similar, and 2 or more people whose definitions are different. And which point of departure are they? At which point do they differ, and at which point are they similar? They may not be completely different, but they may be different in a particular aspect of the definition. When you identify all of this, then we say you are understanding what you are reading. Then you can be able to discuss, to present. And in this presentation, what we say discuss these definitions politically, you are just trying to bring out the differences and the similarities and the points of departure among these definitions of the different authors. So we have given examples of when you can present definitions which carry the same idea in one sentence. For example, you say X, Y, and Z present a somewhat similar definition. In any way you can present this idea. We said the conceptual review section can be subdivided into two. The first section, you discuss the conceptualization of IV. We have also guided you on how to present these definitions in this paragraph. However, in this second paragraph, we said when you mention the elements of your IV, for example, according to different authors, we need you to tell us which elements your study is going to examine. If you have identified those elements, it is important that you go ahead and you define each of those elements further. And you also point out its indicators. So we said these indicators you point out are the summary of elements or measures in the conceptual framework. And these are the ones which give you the points of questions or the source of questions. We have given a sample here and highlighted the key areas we are looking for. For example, in a definition, we are highlighting a number of things: the standard definition from different authors, the elements of the variable from different authors. We are highlighting whether you are able to identify the differences in the definitions and the similarities in the definitions given. So this is what we are looking for in a paragraph of your conceptual review, as you can see in this paragraph sample. So this is a continuation of the sample. You can see the different elements. Here we have highlighted that each DV element or construct is also defined. And as you read, you will see that the elements or the measures of each element are also mentioned. When you don't do this, you cannot draw a meaningful conceptual framework. And when you don't do this, you cannot have a meaningful or a valid or reliable instrument like a questionnaire or interview guide. So if you finish the section on your IV, you do the same for your DV. Shall ignore the other task aspect. Then once you have finished your conceptual review, then you can go to the empirical review. And this is going to be the last aspect we discuss today. Empirical review deals with a discussion of the related findings of previous researchers. The findings of previous researchers related to your study variables. The objective is to find out what did the previous researchers on this topic discover? And what did they not discover? For example, one way to show what did they discover is to find out whether they discovered a significant relationship between your IV and DV. That is one way. Do those findings present a significant relationship? 2, do they present a positive relationship or a negative relationship? 3, do those findings leave any question unanswered according to you, which we call the knowledge gap? When you read those findings, are you contented that all the questions you had have been answered? If no, then identify those which are not yet answered and you call them your research gap you want to fill. And there are so many questions you may ask. For example, what did the previous researchers find out? Did they find a strong relationship or a weak relationship? Did they find a positive relationship or a negative relationship? If weak or strong or positive or negative, what does it mean? What is the logical connection between their findings and the problem you are studying? If that is what you are looking for when you are reading, you will read when you are guided. I know many students go to library to read without guidance. They don't know what they are looking for. So they think that any good information they will find in library is good. No, there is no bad and good information. Information is good for you because it is what you are looking for. Whenever you are looking for an information and you find it, that means it is good. Even if it sounds so nice, but it is not what you are looking for, then it is not good information for your work. Now, what some students do is to find out any information which is nice sounding, and they present it in their work, and they even feel that they are energized, they have done a wonderful job. No, please. Beauty lies in the hands of the beholder. Not a very beautiful girl you see is beautiful. People are not looking for the beauty of the face. If for you are looking for the beauty of the face, then you go for them. Some people are looking for other things. So a statement which sounds nice for you does not necessarily mean that it is good for your work. We said this section can be broken into subsections following different approaches. The first approach is to follow the variables. And this approach usually is the approach when your approach to objectives was approach number 1, which we called variable measurement and relating. If that is the approach you used, your empirical review section will be broken down into 3 major subsections. The first subsection will present empirical findings on the independent variable, which is the variable in the first objective. And the second subsection will present empirical findings on the dependent variable, which is the variable in objective 2. Then the third subsection will present findings on the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable, which is the objective in the third objective, sorry. So it will depend generally on those objectives. However, if you used a many-to-one linking strategy or a one-to-many linking strategy, you may ignore this subsection 1 and 2, and you go straight away to the third subsection on relationship between the independent and dependent variable. Even then, this subsection will be broken down into several other subsections depending on how many objectives you have, or depending on the number of elements of your IV or DV, depending on which approach you used to formulate objectives, whether it is a many-to-one or a one-to-many. So here we said that this section of empirical review can be broken down into subsections based on objectives, especially if the researcher used a many-to-one or a one-to-many linking strategies. And we said that some researchers prefer to only follow this approach in their empirical review. Yes, you will find people who only prefer this and they will go straight away. They will ignore these first sections. They may ignore even the conceptual review. So we said that for this reason, we have provided an example following this approach, the one-to-many. Sorry, the many-to-one. And we said that when you are writing this paragraph under your empirical review, this is what you should look for. When you go, I had not talked about the sources of empirical review. The sources of empirical review may be different from the sources of conceptual and theoretical review. We have to note this. Under empirical review, we are looking for research findings. Therefore, it is either a dissertation, a research report, it is either a journal article or an institutional report with the research findings on the nature of the relationship between the IV and the DV. So the sources may be different, even though you may land on a journal article which gives you the theory, gives you the definition, and gives you the findings. That is okay, but they may not necessarily be. For example, you cannot go to a textbook to look for empirical review. No, you can go for a textbook to look for conceptual and theoretical review. Now, this is the picture of how an empirical review paragraph may look like. This is a paragraph. In this paragraph, we simply mentioned the elements of that your empirical review paragraph. Each paragraph you write is presenting a particular point of findings. So these are the aspects: surname of the author, year of publication, purpose of the study, the place where that study was conducted, either city, country, or district, the major findings of that study, the implications of those findings, the discussion of those findings. Actually, the implications are the discussions of you make out of those findings you have seen, indicating clearly what do those findings mean. Are they in favor of the question you are asking, or are they in favor of your assumption, or they are not in favor? Do they bring out a positive relationship, a significant relationship a weak relationship? Do they say yes to the proposed hypothesis or research question, or they said no? So when you are presenting these findings, it would be better that the findings which speak the same language are presented together, and those which are different are presented together. For example, if a paragraph is presenting findings with positive relationship, you show it. Then you present another paragraph showing negative relationship. Then you present another paragraph showing strong relationship. Another one showing weak relationship, and then maybe another paragraph which tries to join the two or the many different aspects of the findings. So that's why we said the findings which are similar and those which are different. This must be a critical review. So that is when you can bring out the gaps left, and therefore what your study is going to fill. We talked about a critical reader and writer under empirical review section, making sure that the paragraph presented documents empirical findings or empirical studies on one factor or one point of view. Then you discuss it, interpret very well those findings. For example, bringing out what do those findings mean? What are their implications? What else do those findings not answer? That is, what are their weaknesses? What strong point is brought out in those findings? What are the similarities in those findings? What are the differences? And this is what we said, we call it critical review. So you critique, you don't criticize. In academics, we critique, we don't criticize. We accept that that is a person's view. You can identify the weaknesses in it, but we respect it. Because even you, your personal view cannot be another person's view. Another person may see something differently. And we accept that and we respect it, because you may be looking at one angle. It will be not very easy for somebody to look at all the different angles of a given problem. That's why people leave out several things which need to be addressed. I like journalists who are critical. When they are taking their photo, your photograph, they don't take one side. I always look at the journalists who take photos, and I can identify that this journalist is critical, this one is not critical. If I say journalist taking photos, just one side of the person, the face, and that's all, then I know this one is a weak journalist. Many journalists are weak. You can even see the way they have presented the issue. Some don't even go to the ground where the event took place, and therefore they come to TV and radio and maybe newspaper, and they start explaining to us the event. I say, no, I cannot even waste my time over these people. They are just presenting things which are substandard. But I saw one, I think was an American journalist, or German journalist, something like that, who was so critical that on one person like this could take like 10 photos from different angles. They take the front, they take the back, they take the sides. Now they take when they are taking on your head, your ears, your foot, so that at least they have a thorough understanding of the image of the person. Because when you take my front, for example, and I change the back, you may not understand it is me. A person you understand even when they are not facing you, it means you really understand them. That's why during COVID, people suffered a lot because people were covering their faces. Very few people would identify even their own closest people. A man would even fail to identify his wife, or a wife would fail to identify his husband because he's putting on a mask. Because they are not critical when they are looking at them. They only know their fronts and they don't know their backs. That is funny anyway. There is a sample here. I want you to look at this sample and try to identify the key features of an empirical review paragraph we have talked about. When you do that, I will know you have understood. For me, when I am assessing, I'm evaluating whether you have understood. It should be practical. Not just for you to grammar. No, practically you should look at a paragraph and be able to even tell that, oh, this paragraph does not bring out this. If you have understood, you can now begin doing what we call the critiquing or the critical review. If time allows, we shall also give you a presentation on what we call critical reviewing of an article. This is the second sample, a third sample of the empirical review, and so on and so forth. And this brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you for attending. If there is any question, we can accept that question now. If there is no quick question, then we shall allow you to ask questions even on the platform. What shows me that people have really understood and they are really working on their researches is the way they are active on the platform, the WhatsApp group we put up. Learning does not only take place when you are in this class, it can take place even after, and that is better. Thank you. I'm waiting for your questions, members. You have two options, either to type the question in the chat or to unmute and you ask. The next time we are meeting, we are going to be discussing methodology. And that will be next week on Thursday. Okay, members, if there are no questions, then we can say bye-bye to you. Thank you for attending. I'll design an agenda.
Doctor, question, though I'm moving. I don't know whether.
Yes.
Doctor, can you hear me?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Doctor, I'm wondering, is it possible that a researcher can, I don't know, like beat around the bush and customize his work towards what the bias part, towards what he's already interested in? Because, and then also kind of concentrate, because there's a lot of literature out there, can concentrate on moving towards what, like picking what he wants to position the whole research, and then at the end of the day, get conclusions of what he is interested in, rather than the general, like being objective and getting everything, capturing everything. And all with the knowing in mind that the people, like let's assume it's academic, the people to look at this work may not have read everything. So I don't know, please comment on that.
I don't know. What you mean that you concentrate on your idea without discussing what others have said?
I discuss what others have said, but kind of selectively and picking out so that I drive my point home, which is like, I think it's bias. I think it's kind of bias. How can that be eliminated? Because I'm looking at the situation where that if my research, I already know, kind of feel like I know the results, I move the research towards that. Even there is the literature that I'm looking at, selectively, I kind of pick out one-sided until the end. Is it possible?
Now, I don't know whether I got you well, but just to know that as a researcher, yesterday we said that you begin with the end in mind. That is one. Two, as a researcher, you have questions for which you are asking whether previous researchers have answered them, whether the available answers have tried to answer your questions. And those are the evidences you are bringing in literature review. If they are not answered the way you want them to be answered, it gives you a gap for you to go ahead and look for answers yourself by collecting data and answer them the way you want them to be answered. Yes, you may say it is biased. Yes, every researcher must have a particular level of bias to their research. You only have to back up your bias by showing that other people have not answered the way you want them to be answered. Once you prove that, yes, there is a need to answer that particular idea in a particular way, then you convince the public. And you never know, it may be as biased but useful. There is, let me also say, like some other people said that there is useful bias. Others said there is useful idiot. But me, I'm talking about useful bias. There is useful bias. If you are not biased to your research, because bias means the attachment, the strong attachment you have to your idea. And everybody should naturally have it. A strong attachment you have. You feel that no, other people have not answered it the way I want it to be answered, the way I see it. You go and collect data. You may make a very important discovery by that bias. What we are encouraging you to do is to make a thorough review to ensure that the answers literature review provides do not satisfy you. You bring out that well. You say, even though this one said this and this and this, even though Chivuka found out this and this and this, but his was among rich people. His was among the rich people, but I want to see how are the findings looking like when you consider people of the. Let me tell you, the example we gave of household size or family size and the economic, the socio-economic development of a family or a household. Many theories have come out to prove that the larger the family size, the poorer the members will be. But we have several questions about it. What kind of people did they look at? From which locations? What jobs were they doing? What cultural background were of those people? What religion are they? And so on. What level of education are they? If somebody has 20 children and they have all gone to school and they have all graduated, you mean they will be poor? If somebody has 2 kids he has not managed to take to school, will they be rich just by virtue of being few? So those are questions which can remain in different angles. As a researcher, when you find one answer, you can fine tune your question and say, no, okay, if you have given me that answer, what about this one? You can even drop a question in one fashion and you fashion it differently so that you can drive your research to the end, as long as you have not moved away from your point. Okay, let me look at how your face look like. And once somebody shows their face, you can say, oh, okay, let me look at your back. Okay, let me look at your side, your left hand side and see. Okay, let me look at your right hand side. Now I want to look at your foot. How does it look like? Okay, now I have seen, but I want to measure your head. So that somebody cannot go and put an end to your question. There are so many ways your question can be phrased and rephrased. Whenever you find an answer to one way of phrasing, you change the phrasing. That is called discovery or being innovative. And that's why research continues, because a question answered in one fashion does not provide the answers to other fashions. That's why you can see that fashions of a dress can never end. Colors of a dress can never end. Every day we have different colors coming. So I don't know whether I have answered your question. Somebody has another question, you can ask.
Thank you, Doctor. I have around 3 questions. They are brief. One
Yes.
is there a possibility of an area somebody is interested in not having any theory at all? And if it happens that way, what's the way forward? The second one is, like we have been discussing from yesterday all through even up to part of today, we talked about acceptable time frame within which somebody should be able to get the literature or to review the literature. Now, does that also apply to theoretical and then conceptual reviews? Do we have a time limit that beyond this time, then such a theory may not be taken? Lastly, is about submission of the other first work you gave us. You talked of the secretary, but it seems members are not sure of where that secretary sits. Is it Alex? Is it another secretary? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with the last that at this level, I believe you have the capacity to find out the secretary I'm talking about. If you yourself, you don't know, we are in research, investigation, you can ask a friend. But where does Dr. Chibuka sit? It cannot even take you a day. If for me, for example, I'm looking for you, I don't necessarily have to ask you. You just try it out and you tell me to find you in your office. I will find you without even asking you. If I want your number, you will get it even if I don't get it from you. If I want to know your wife, I will know her even if I don't ask you. So I have answered that question. Let me go. Let me go to the
Doctor.
yes. Let me go to the theory. The question on theory. For us in research, even when you don't find information, it is good. It is okay. you report. Research and literature review, you are reporting your literature search results. You are reporting your search results. And these search results are literature review search, literature search. What were the findings? The findings are presented in answering different angles of a question. For example, the first question, are there theories explaining? Sometimes depending on the answer you give to that question, we can decide whether to go to the next question or not. For example, if you, as a researcher, you try to investigate throughout the existing literature and you find that the theory is silent about your research issue, you report that. You report that and you tell us what are you going to do as far as that gap is concerned. But if the answer is yes, then you will go ahead to tell us what are those theoretical contributors or contributions by mentioning a number of them. Then once you do that, another question comes, what do they say? So it is a network of questions, but what some answers may put a stop to the discussion or may bring a desire for answers to other questions, to the next questions. Take an example. If you are going to talk about somebody's parenting styles or parenting experiences, and somebody, you find that a man is 35 years, he has no children, or a woman, you are going to investigate about their breastfeeding practices. He is 35 years, has never produced a child. So once you ask the question of how many children you have or the number of births you have had, and the person puts a 0, it puts an automatic end to the investigation with that person. So that is what I can say, although I can finally say that it will be rare. We may not look for exactly what explains your problem, but what is related, and it may be rare. But if it exists, then you report. Because I wonder whether your research idea is really, because it is from a particular field, discipline of interest. And in that discipline, there are several theories. At least you begin by saying that in this area, there are several theories, but a theory on this very aspect is lacking. And you end it up all. Then lastly, the second question was about, the second question, repeat it, about literature. Repeat it for me, the second question, so that I can pick it well.
Yes.
Yes.
So I was asking about the acceptable time. Is it 5 years, 10 years,
Okay,
or it
okay,
can be
I've
open,
got it.
especially for the theory?
Yes. It still depends on availability. Okay. If recent literature is available, we prefer it to the old literature. And recent may be 5 years, within 5 years. But if recent literature is not there, what is there becomes the recent. even if it is 10 years, and you have searched that there are no recent literatures, then you are presenting, remember we said you are presenting a temporal gap that the existing studies are of long ago, but those which exist are the ones you discuss, and you show that recent are not there. So we shall not say, don't present literature because the literature which is there is 15 years old. No, the one which is 15 years, even if it is 20 years old, is the one you present, but you show in your discussion that all the existing literatures are old. So you show that recent researchers have ignored this issue. And probably to you, you can also explain why do you think recent researchers have been ignoring this issue. I sometimes talk to people who are doing research in technology, but especially the communication technology. When you look at the theory of the communication, it has come from a long far. Some people may think that this technology, communication technology, has started yesterday. No, long ago. It has only come while changing and improving. So that's what I can say, that we can never say that literature is old. What we say that when there is recent literature, we prefer recent literature to the old literature. But as long as you are sure that there is no recent literature, then the one which is existing becomes the best literature. And nobody will attack you for that if you have indicated it. Because remember, I said literature, you are reporting your findings in the literature search. So you begin by reporting that all the available literatures are beginning from this year, and from this period onwards, there is no literature. There are no studies that have been done. They could even be there, but you can show that in your particular country, there are no studies. You may be very, very much aware that in third world countries, our research capacities are still low. You may find an issue in Uganda which has taken 10 years when nobody in Uganda has researched about it. Yet, researches have been going on in the world about that issue. But in Uganda, you may find many issues have taken 20, 10 years without any researcher getting attracted to them. Because PhD students want to do research to where their funders want. Funders have particular interests. So we can never say that there is no literature, especially in your time. We only fail to report well. You only if, for example, you just present your literature of 10 years ago, and you don't even tell people that you are presenting this literature of 10 years ago because recent literature is lacking, then they will attack you. We don't want to be fanatic in research by fixing things, as if we shall be telling students that they must do research on only those issues that have been recently researched upon. An issue may be important, but may have been ignored by researchers of previous time or of recent time. Thank you. And if there are no other classes, other questions, we can decide to stop here. Thank you, members, for the wonderful attention you have given. You have a biggest journey to walk. We have made the discussion. You can see that it is very easy to teach literature review. Very easy. for me to discuss for you how to write literature. But writing literature is not as easy as saying it. If you want to prove this one, you start tomorrow to write your literature review. And if you don't start, by the time you start, your head will be empty of all what we have said. It is always important that when you want to begin your research, you begin the time when you are boiled up by maybe the presentation the teacher has made. And if you take 1 year before you begin writing your literature, I would request that the time you want to begin writing, go back to class of research methods and they discuss for you so that they re-energize you to begin writing. Otherwise, don't wait until you are empty, the morale is low, you don't even, because you have a lot of issues you are questioning. Like those questions you have been asking, they are already in your head, and many others have not been asked. We used to have the same questions. But for example, me, I used to wonder whether people believe that on everything there is a theory. Because the perspective of a theory we had was different. But now, if we have warmed you up, you need to begin at this very time. At least identify the journals. There are some other issues I have not been able to talk about, like how do you search, the best ways of searching, especially for empirical review. You have an objective, you want to discuss it in literature. How do you search? When you have gone to Mr. Google, you punch in that objective, the whole of it. But you can change the phrasing like 3 or 4 times if you want to get rich literature. You punch in the objective, not in one way, one style. You can change here, you can, if it was a relationship, then you can change and you call it effect. If it was effect, you change and you call it relationship. If it was relationship, you can call it impact. You can keep changing words which mean the same, and you get all those studies. I believe the person who taught you computer application in research has taught you all these techniques of search engines and how to enter into the relevant literature sources and so on. Gather. For example, if you are researching about that particular problem, you can even be able to count exactly how many articles or researches have you found out in all your searches which have addressed that issue. They are countable. If there are so many, then you can say, yes, you are lucky. There are so many. But one other issue that shows that we don't read carefully or critically is that we all want to research on the same issue. You go to the library, you look at people who researched on human resource practices, you will also search for that. Unfortunately, even some of the supervisors want to see what they have already seen. They don't want to see what they have never seen. And that is curtailing you, your thinking, your creativity, your innovativeness. The world cannot grow when we are only doing the same things all the time, especially in research. Because your supervisor did human resource management practices, therefore even you should do human resource management practices. Who said? Move away from the supervisor and you go to supervisor who is interested in your idea. Because you will not repeat that research for PhD, I tell you, unless you have time, but you may not repeat it quickly. So really do what you love. Do what you love and love what you do. Thank you. Let me close, members. Thank you for attending. You have a wonderful, it is no longer day now, it is a night.
Thank you, Doctor, for the wonderful presentation.
Please.